Is the Greg not here? I think it's close to the copy.
So I have 10:30, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. I believe Director Rainbow is here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, do you want to turn, are you going to turn your camera on?
I will in a moment.
I'll call the meeting to order. We would like to recognize that collectively we are on the unceded territories of all the First Nations within our regional boundaries. And I will open the floor for nominations for chair.
I'll nominate Mr. Russell Mack as chair.
Do you accept Director Mack?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll call for nominations for a second time. And I will call for nominations for a third time. And Director Mack is acclaimed as chair of the EAD committee. And I will turn over the election of the vice chair.
Okay, so do we have nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Director Saldemare, please.
Do you accept?
Yes.
Right. I will call a second time for nominations. I'll call a third time for nominations. Congratulations, Sal. Okay, we can move on. So could I get an approval of the agenda, please? Moved and seconded.
Yep. I just wondered with these agendas, I don't see the area director plans that usually kind of come up every few months. And so I wondered, is that another document that we'll be talking about at the strategic planning sessions, or? It's just not routinely, it's just not here.
Aspirational plans.
Well, that word is in there. I always objected to that word, but yeah, that's the plan.
Run that by me again.
Well, normally, I think every quarter, the EAD area plans would come up for review. And I haven't seen them.
Like the plans as what we want, our priorities.
Yes. And I just wondered if they're being removed from the sort of routine review or what's happening with them. And is that a topic that is going to be talked about at the strategic planning session?
Yeah, Craig, go ahead.
Thanks. Through the chair. Yes. So we're in the process of building a strat plan and a corporate work plan that is meant to incorporate electoral area director priorities and inputs so that we have one plan to execute. So right now there is nothing that directs what we do with those aspirational plans. It's an additional work document. It's an additional tool to manage. And I will address that during the strategic planning session. I'm happy to connect as well at any time if you've got a question on that. But we're moving to hopefully what is a system that is more efficient, that will allow us to clearly all be looking at the same list of priorities, not 3 or 4 different lists and 3 or 4 different lists to manage, but like a good, strong, healthy organization, everybody on the same page. Here are our priorities for 2023. We get on, do the work, and report on those priorities. So that's the intent moving forward. I would also add what I would encourage the electoral area directors to do is over the next 2 days in the strategic planning session, and I'll work with the facilitator to make sure this is clear, to make sure you take the opportunity to address your priorities within the construct of that strategic planning session. So our intent is to bring forward your priorities as part of that exercise, not as a separate list, not as a separate plan, not as a separate body.
Okay, Sal.
Just curious, I think I've got my latest version, but I'm not sure if the other 3 directors have their latest versions. Is it something that we could get from staff prior to the sessions the next couple of days?
Yeah, I can take a look for those, but I would encourage directors to come with their priorities. I'll try and take a look and see where those lists are. But I would,
I think it was one document.
okay, I would think directors would have their priorities and would be able to participate with those in mind. And that this is an example of again, roles and responsibilities and who does what to who. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to move us to a system of managing our business that allows us to be efficient and get some work done. So I will go online and try and find those, but I would have thought the directors would have their priorities. And my apologies if I've got that wrong.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you. I think it's, I usually have my latest version floating around somewhere. They would, going back through the EAD agendas, I can't remember how many months ago it was that we looked at them, maybe quite a few, I think, at this point, but still. They're very different from one another because the areas are very different from one another. So I'm not sure we'll be able to align them all into one package that we all agree on, but I understand what you're trying to do. I just don't want the baby thrown out with the bathwater here. I was not completely satisfied with the aspirational plans that we were working with, but that was something better than nothing. I'm keen to see what we can do.
Yeah, I think what we need to discuss is, instead of having we can have an aspirational plan with a dozen items on it, but we only present one item at a time. Instead of handing staff a list of here's 1 to 10, just give them 1, it's gone. Give them 2, it's gone. And that way, I think it would be a lot, just a lot more manageable, and you would know exactly where you are with your plan, right? So I want to get number 1, like in my world, area C, the biggest thing that I've got to deal with is road maintenance, because it's horrible, as I've said so many times. So I need to concentrate all our efforts on that one thing. Once that's manageable or whatever, then go to the next one. But anyways, Craig, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair. So, yeah, I'll as I tried to speak to last week during the first orientation session, we have got a very big disconnect between capacity and expectations here. And that disconnect is facilitated and it grows and it frustrates people because we do not have a simple performance management framework in place. We need one list of priorities, in my humble opinion, and then we need to take that list of priorities and the board's job, not simply EAD and electoral directors, the board's job is to establish those priorities. Our job is to take the list and do the work. So my recommendation to electoral area directors is do your best to have your priorities reflected on that list of priorities that the board will assign to staff. If it's not on that list, it makes no sense to spend time talking about it, updating it. It's to be honest, it's not a good use of time. So you may have 10 things on your list as an electoral area director. Maintain that list, because what we're going to do, or what I hope we do and the board agrees to, is once we produce the board strategic plan and list of priorities for 2023, and an accompanying corporate work plan that says, here's how we're going to apply resources to get that work done. We're going to review progress every quarter. And when things are complete and capacity is freed up, we're going to go back to the list established by the board and work on the next item. So again, we have a real opportunity here to address what I think is our biggest challenge, and that's multiple to-do lists, multiple plans, trying to keep those updated for no real reason, because we only have the capacity we have. And what we're looking for is that one list approved by the board that we go get done and report on. And then in the fall of every year, so this year we're really up against it in terms of timelines and alignment with the budget process. But heading into 2024, we want to start this conversation in September. We want to start it in Q3 2023. We want to, and we will have reviewed progress on the board's priorities twice by then, at the end of Q1 and Q2 2023, and we'll have a conversation about that list of priorities and work plan for 2024. So this is really about streamlining and being efficient. We don't have the capacity to manage different lists, different plans, report on them, meet different expectations. I think the smart thing for our organization is one list of priorities that the board says, yeah, that's the list, recognizing that it'll change. A grant may pop up. There may be something of an urgent nature in an electoral area director or in an electoral area, and we'll have a mechanism in place to adjust as we move through the year. But one plan that is communicated to the public, one plan that we manage internally, that's what we're working. I'd like to see us work towards.
Thank you. Tony, are you okay there? We can't see you.
Good morning. I just want to, if I may, just take about 30 seconds to say that I did that deliberately, kept my camera off, and I was hoping it would prompt a question at some point, like, are you still there? Are you with us? And the reason I did it is because I've already spoken to Jen, and at some point in the next couple of days or maybe later, I'm going to be suggesting that when we have a Zoom meeting, attendees at the Zoom meeting must keep their video on. I find it quite irritating when we're in a meeting and I don't know whether somebody, I see their name on the screen. I don't know if they're there. I don't know if they're participating. And I went to a meeting at Metro Vancouver, and I was told right at the start, yeah, you keep your video on. That's their policy. So I just think it's something we should consider. And I was listening. I've got Russell's comment about road maintenance and Viv's comment about the difficulty of trying to come up with a plan for all of the electoral areas because we're so different. I was listening to Craig and the plan for 2023, and I had one question: what if we need to change something? And then he answered that later on, saying that if a grant pops up, then we need a mechanism to adjust the plan. So I mentioned those things just so you know that I actually was participating in the meeting, but you had no idea whether I was or not. So that's thank you very much for indulging me, and I will be bringing that up again.
Okay, very good. So leave your camera on, Tony.
The issue is that if your internet connection isn't strong, it often helps immensely to turn the camera off. And so I often do that in Lillooet for that very reason. We're on TELUS. It's not great.
But I think you normally say that.
Yes, you do. And you can still pop up in the chat and so
Yeah.
on. And I think
So,
I better.
if the person says that for a reason, I have to do this, but I'm here, well, then that's fine. We know you're there, right? So
Would you like a motion to approve the agenda?
I think we're there, aren't we?
Yeah, you did that.
You haven't carried it.
No.
Second.
So it was approved by Sal and second by Vivian. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Consent agenda. Motion to approve that.
I just have a couple of comments on item 3.2.1, the select funds report. I don't even think we should have consent agendas on these.
So we will pull that and it will be item 5.7.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so other than that, we can approve the consent agenda. Moved by Vivian, seconded by Sal. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Very nice. Okay, business arising from the minutes. I don't believe there is any. Staff reports and other business.
But Miss Hollenbrander and Ms. Needham.
Yes, and we're now dealing with 5.1.
Correct.
Okay,
And we don't have a staff report?
yeah, they're coming.
Okay, I see.
So what I would suggest, because you had some questions, concerns, whatever, feel free to indulge yourself.
Okay, let me find the item.
Morning, Kim. Good morning, Brenda.
Morning.
Is there any kind of presentation or are you just accepting questions?
Now, are you guys giving a presentation on this or just wanting questions?
Brenda can walk you through the proposed bylaw changes.
Okay,
Sure.
and Vivian's gonna have some questions along the way. So I'm quite interested too, so anyways, carry on, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so this bylaw was initially started in 2018 and kind of went concurrently with some proposed zoning changes at the time. So we're now bringing this back, and you saw the zoning bylaw and this bylaw at the September board meeting. So we're bringing it back because there was quite a few changes happening to the provincial regulations kind of when this first started in 2018. So yeah, most of the changes that have occurred since 2018 are related to changes that are just in alignment with the ALC Act and Use Regulation. So I can provide just kind of a brief overview. So what's being proposed is mostly general housekeeping, so some formatting and structure changes, mostly to align with how we've now laid out the other OCPs in other areas. And then the other changes are mostly to do with the agriculture section. So just to provide a little bit of detail there, changes are proposed to kind of create a decision-making criteria when looking at agricultural applications. Some additional details on agricultural impact assessments. So there is one existing policy, but it's not very detailed. So the intent is just to provide a little bit more detail about what to look for in those assessments. And some details around mitigation methods. Changes to agricultural tourism provisions. So there's no longer the requirement for a site-specific zoning amendment for agritourism. And then some minor changes to agricultural land use designation in the bylaw. So again, this is mostly just to align with what's being proposed in the zoning bylaw. And it's kind of meant to go concurrently. So the zoning bylaw did not previously receive first reading in 2018, but the OCP did. So that's why we're bringing this back to request that first reading be rescinded first, and then this new version of the bylaw be considered for first reading. So yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay,
Vivian, go ahead.
thank you. I really had a very difficult time trying to comprehend what changes were happening here. Like, when I see things like, first of all, there's a couple of things that I'd like you to correct. There's a reference to sea to sky invasives. And in area B, I would prefer Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society. Okay, that's on page 43 of this package. And then on page 44, there's a reference to the aesthetics and to maintain a West Coast mountain character. And I go, okay, we're in the rain shadow, like we're on the other side of the mountains in area B. And so comments like that around aesthetics, aside from being inaccurate, I don't really want them in the plan at all. I don't feel like this is the place for And so when I start seeing those kinds of things and I go, well, no, that's not a good fit for area B, then my sort of index of alertness and reviewing this goes up, and I'm not feeling confident in all the changes. And because I don't have the before version and the current version and the rationale or the reason for making the change, it's hard for me to kind of critically go through it. And I did spend some time trying to go back to the old document and come back and see, but then there's these sort of broad stroke statements, like on 23, I'm looking at policy provisions are being added, such as they're intended to facilitate the ability of the board staff, similarly to what you're just saying, but that sort of, I'm not comfortable just approving that without actually seeing the content. So as far as I'm concerned, this doesn't have any urgency. And what I would like to see is what it said before, what the proposed amendments are, and then in the third column, why. Does that make sense? And is that an unreasonable request?
Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. Most of the OCP amendments that include development permit areas are all new. So there's the reason you're not seeing that in the before is that Area B doesn't have much in the way of development permits. So these are all new. So
Okay.
yeah, and this is in line with what we've done with other OCPs. So like form and character, as you mentioned. So that would be if a large building were proposed in Area B somewhere, highly doubt that it would, but this would put in some guidelines so that the building wouldn't be what we call a pink palace. We could actually have some criteria to ensure that it had a development that it actually looked good.
West Coast mountain character? Then I just go, I don't think so. Sorry, I hear you about the pink palace, but I just don't want to, I want to separate out what the requirements are in the sense of what the building code says and what the variances are and how far, you know, the actual legal requirements from sort of some of the aesthetics. And so I'd like the opportunity to really see what those comments are, actually line by line. We've done this with other items at committee and at this board, because is this like, when you're talking about sending it for referral, and I would actually like to know exactly which agencies it's going to for referrals. Would you be sending them this package, like what I'm looking at today? Because it's too hard for somebody to look at and comprehend and make an informed decision on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll just add to that if I can. Like, when I read this, it seems that we make everything so specific. And I think we have to remember where Area B is, where Area A is, and a lot of Area C. I mean, it's remotely rural. You know, your neighbor's not really concerned with what color you paint your house or whatever. It's the functionality of the thing. And I just find that we're making things so difficult for people to just get on with building a house, living, doing whatever. I know it's very frustrating for the people out there that are going through this, you know, of building a new house or doing whatever. I know we have to abide by the building code and such, and even with the building code, there's certain parts of that building code that the building inspector has some discretion over it. Not a life safety issue, but I just don't think that we should be telling people, like I say, what color to paint their houses or how to do their kitchens or any of that stuff, or even their landscaping. I mean, if somebody was to come up and say that, you know, our landscaping doesn't meet the criteria, I mean, you'd have to say, well, how did you get here and what are you doing here? I mean, we're in the middle of absolutely nowhere. So I think we just have to take a lot of that into consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This bylaw isn't prescribing, you know, how people paint their houses. It's really more if there is a commercial or industrial building, it gives some guidance about environmental prescriptions. So they're guidelines, but it's really more like how to make things as green as they can be, you know, xeriscaping, using, you know, landscaping that uses less water. But what we could do if there are concerns about the development permits that are being introduced, we could remove the development permits from the bylaw and just make changes simply to change any kinds of definitions or update language to reflect current departments and provincial departments that are referred to in the bylaw. We can strip out the development permit stuff and just keep it very basic if that's what's preferred.
There's some value in the development permit, and I'm not wanting to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I'm appreciating that you're trying to improve this, and there's some improvements here. What I can't do is get my head around all the changes that are being made. And so the way that I need to see it is, here's what it says now, here's what we're proposing that it says. And then if there's any relevant rationale or rules or updates, like it's 3 columns on a page. And I don't necessarily think the entire board would be interested in this, but I certainly am. And I don't know if this is asking for too much time on the part of staff, but it seems to me you would have had to do this anyway when you were getting this report ready, right? Like you would have been comparing what you'd like it to look like with what it looks like now. And that's the basis for this report. I just can't follow it all. I need it to be laid out a little more simply. And I'm sure that you've done that in your own work in preparation for this. That's what I'd like to see. I'd be perfectly happy to see it outside of a meeting if it's only pertinent to area B, if that's all right. But it's certainly not ready to go for referral the way it is, I don't think. So that's what I'd like to request.
So one thing that I did hear Kim say is that a lot of this new stuff is new stuff. So there's nothing to compare it to. Is that correct?
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's,
Sal, go ahead.
the riparian DPA has always been there. So that's a prime example of one where you can compare the old to the new. And same thing with the wildfire DPA.
And those are both really important topics.
Both very important.
Yeah.
We, like at Gun Lake, it's amazing how many houses were built in the years past that were in that
Riparian zone.
the 30-meter riparian zone. And I know my neighbor is one of them, and I know he looked at putting a second story on his building because you can't expand on it anymore. So that piece there is important. So there are some that we do have already that, yeah.
I also wondered, there was a reference to the MOTI comments that came in on the last referral. Apparently that was the only agency that made a comment and I couldn't find it. Now, I only gave this a few hours, okay? I was busy on Monday, I was busy on Tuesday. I would have given it more time, but I only had a few hours. And so possibly if I'd done some more time, I could have found the answers to some of these questions. I mean, and I like to come prepared, but I actually just didn't have in front of me the information that I needed to be able to say I was comfortable with it. So, you know, for example, LRIS, so like I think page 34, do they have to apply for a permit if Lillooet Regional Invasive Species is going to be doing a removal of invasive species on a small scale? Because there's a reduced application fee, but there's still an application fee and there's an application, and I certainly don't want LRIS to be held up with that kind of nonsense when they're doing perfectly wonderful work. Those sorts of things. What is the MOTI comment, if I may ask?
We'll answer that through the chair. So I don't remember the exact comments they made, but they were related to things like lighting, and I think sighting, things like that. I can't remember exactly. I'd have to look at it again, but we did note in the report that we'll have to go through that referral process again because the changes are extensive enough that we feel that they should be re-referred.
And so in the referral, would this be a similar kind of report to what would be included in the referral? Because that's what I'm not too comfortable with that. So I'll maybe just leave those questions with you.
So where would you like to go with this, then, Vivian?
Maybe to ask staff, is it possible to be presented with the more detailed breakdown of what the actual changes are that are being proposed here? The before suggested and the rationale is, I don't know if that's a reasonable request in terms of time, but I just assume that it's been done already because we're looking at this report at the table.
Are you okay with that, Kim and Brenda?
Yes.
And okay, good. Okay, then we'll do that as an aside to a regular meeting and then have this come back again.
So do we want to just defer this till you get the answers or the questions you want answered? Is that all right with you, Kim and Brenda? Okay.
Thank you.
So you.
And then I can ask you some of the other questions I had going through too, and I'm sure you can probably answer them in a heartbeat, and I don't have to waste any more time at this table.
Okay, so you're going to make a motion then to defer this
To
get
yeah.
more information?
Yeah, the area B director to work with staff and just to kind of review in a comparative way what the current documentation says, what the proposed documentation says, side by side. If there is something existing, obviously, if it's a new section, then it stands alone, and that's fine. And I know we spent some time on the development permit area and so on. And then also to have some sort of rationale for the change, which I think would be very helpful to develop for the referral document anyway. So I hope that it's not too much of a duplication of the work you're already doing. Okay, so that's not a very good motion. Just to
Defer it for further discussion between staff and the area D director.
hopefully B.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, area D.
Leave me out of it.
Just checking to see if you were still paying attention to it.
Oh, I'm awake. May I, just a quick comment to Viv. I understand what you're saying about the aesthetics of, West Coast mountain, and that doesn't quite fit you. So what would you say? Interior desert, or what would you say?
Rain shadow.
Because I don't have a problem
It
with
needs to be rain shadow.
I don't have a problem with talking about the aesthetics of an area, but you've got to give it some sort of characterization. And
I don't think we need to put any aesthetics in there at all, but that's
No.
Vivian speaking. That's a personal opinion. And I personally like to leave my opinions out of this. I just want it to be a document that makes sense to me, that has it laid out in a way that you can see why we're making these changes and how they're improvements. And then we should be able to work through it pretty quick. I think if I have that comparative table.
So,
Yes.
I've got one last question. This is for Brenda. So I presume that some of these will be looked at into putting into the area AOCP draft.
Yes.
Through the chair, yes. I think the changes specifically to the criteria for agriculture applications will be also coming forward as for the Area A OCP draft. We've already made those changes in the other OCPs, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
So would you just like to refer this back to staff? Or, because if we defer it, then this actual package would come back exactly as
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, so a referral back to
So
staff.
refer back to staff to address.
To maybe change the layout, and so that we can look at it again in a more detailed comparative way.
So just to address your
Does that make sense?
area
to
D
everybody?
director's concerns. Okay,
And will that work for staff? Okay.
yep. See, it's
So,
not.
okay, so that's the very
So
sloppy
moved
motion.
And seconded. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried.
And thank you.
Okay, we're off to now 5.2. Request for decision 2023 electoral area directors committee meeting calendar. Chris, you'd like to just give us an update on some of the reasoning for what it is?
So we've stuck with our historical approach, which is generally the EAD meets the second Wednesday of each month. Except for we've identified a few months where that isn't recommended. So February, it would be the first Tuesday, and that's because of
GLA.
because of LGMA, or sorry, LGLA seminar that some or all electoral area directors may be attending. April, it would be the first Wednesday as opposed to the second, and that's because of the timing of the board meeting. We like to keep that 2-week period in between. June would be the first Wednesday, August, no meeting, and December is the first Monday. And that's because of how the board meeting falls next December. It actually falls during the second week of the month. So that tries to give us a little bit of time between.
I'll move it.
And I'll second that.
Second. Okay, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried.
I was going to ask a quick question about when is the spring break holiday in this year? Is that, we usually pay some attention to that, and I don't know when it is.
I did.
It's on the calendar.
Related to Easter.
It's on the calendar, but a few years ago, the board's direction was that we not work around those school breaks anymore. But the March break for school district 48 is March 13th to the 24th. And the school break for school district 74 is March 27th to April 7th.
Ah, okay, thank you.
And I provided the dates to Kristen for the Fraser Basin Council, as well as Northern Development Initiative Trust, maybe just to add to the calendar.
We don't really have space to add, but we can kind of keep it separate.
Totally fine.
We don't really, aren't really able to keep those up in terms of if there's changes to those dates. But yeah, thanks, I do.
Well, good for your information. And then, of course, the hospital, Northern Thompson Regional Health District, Thompson Nicola Health Board.
Thompson Regional Hospital District.
Thank you.
There's
Never
so
would have
many,
gotten.
so many meetings that each and every one of us attend. I think it's our responsibility to
Keep track of them.
keep track of them and mark them down in our calendars.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a note in my calendar here, and a very nice new calendar, that April the 17th is International Bat Appreciation Day, which I will observe.
Everything is leading up to it.
Very good. Okay, so good to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, 5.3, request for decision electoral area A regulatory bylaw and fees and charges bylaw in relation to the regional park and regional trail service. Do you want to say anything on?
I got one change.
Oh, good. Melanie's going to join us.
There's the mountains.
Good morning, Melanie.
Good morning, Chair Mac,
How are
directors.
you? Good to
Very
see
well,
you.
thank you. How are you? Thank you. You too.
Are you snowed in?
No, I got a little bit of snow out there. It's cold, but it's not snowed in. No snow
Very good.
recently.
So let's get on with this park stuff then, because it's very interesting. You've done a great job. Appreciate it very much. So Sal,
Yeah,
want to start it off?
yeah. Ms. Halbert, just all I got is on prohibitions, vehicles,
Yes,
and E, operate an off-road vehicle. I'd like to change that to unless permitted for a designated area by signage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Because sometimes, like, even with parks, right? They designate that you can ride an e-bike here.
Yeah, designated trails.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So even with trails, like, one thing we just look at this, it's all intended for non-motorized
yeah.
recreation, right? So trails, we do have lots of multi-use trails.
Yeah.
Lots where ORVs are allowed, snowmobiles and so on and so forth. That's all. Other than that, I'll move back.
So there's 3 dots.
The 3.
So if we could just get a resolution that staff incorporate the changes.
Yeah.
As amended.
So I'd like to make an amendment to the bylaw.
It's not, because it's not, hasn't received any readings, so it's
Yeah.
not an amendment, but just if we could reflect
The
the
change.
change
Yeah.
in general terms, and then we can go on and do the reads.
Yeah. Prohibitions, vehicles, item E.
What section is that?
Prohibitions,
Is there a number?
9,
9.
9E.
And that's in the regulatory bylaw?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we could just pass that.
Okay, so Moved and seconded. And I'll call a question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. So that would be for all of that.
That's a standalone that,
Okay,
and now we go and do the next three that's.
the next three that's, can we do them all together then?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
So moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Now call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. So all those three that's. 5.4 is a request for decision. Electoral Area B regulatory bylaw and fees and charges bylaw in relation to the regional parks and regional trail service.
I'd like to move those. Thank you.
As is.
All of them, yes. I
Okay.
just would like the opportunity to review, the First Nations that are being referred out to. Is that's complicated in Area B, and I just want to have a chance to do a double check on that. Things are changing.
Okay, so you want to move,
1, 2, 3, that's as, that it be recommended to the
There's-
regional board.
okay, and then the fourth that, which is the appropriate First Nations, what do you want to do there?
Just that, Parks and Trails, Area B, very contentious, and I just would like to double check on the referrals out to the First Nations, that we've covered them all. Statling Ecological Services, Statling Government Services, Papeglia Council, Tribal Council, and the 6 bands. This is quite, and I can double check on who's in and out in the Tribal Council and so forth, but I just would like to make sure that we cover it 100% and get it right. And I'd like to help because it's complicated.
So do you want that formalized in a resolution, or are you confident that you can just follow up directly?
I'm completely confident. that
So we can
yes,
proceed
please. Yes,
as presented? Okay.
yes,
Okay, so as presented then,
yes.
we can do all four.
Yes.
Okay. So moved and seconded. Call a question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. 5.5. Request for decision, Electoral Area C regulatory bylaw and fees and charges bylaw in relation to the regional parks and regional trail service. Thank you for this, Melanie. The only thing I would like to make sure, and I want to just get to there, is with the trails. I think I spoke to you on this. I'd like to see the trails as multi-purpose as possible. So that, we've got hikers, bikers, ATVs, ORVs, horses, all that kind of stuff are using the trails. There's going to be some trails that are specific maybe to each individual use, but for the most part, I would just like to make sure that there's, say, free access to all our trails and that throughout the area. And I guess, so in our area, with First Nations, then we've got Lillooet, we've got Naguatwa, and we've got, I'm gonna say,
Head of the lake.
as in the head of what lake? Douglas?
I guess. so.
No, that's not Harris, that's not in our,
Your area.
that's not in our regional district. But I'm thinking maybe that Skookumchuck, and that is, if we could check on that, just to make sure that sort of not the lower lakes, the middle of the group there are included in this. Does that sound feasible?
Yep,
Okay.
for sure. We can double check the First Nations.
Okay, thank you on that. So the same with with myself, then I'm good with all for that. So I'll move it,
I'll second
second
it.
it. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Now we go off to 5.6 is request for decision, electoral area D, regulatory bylaw, fees and charges bylaw in relation to the regional parks and regional trail service. Tony.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that the process that Melanie used to get to this point, I really appreciated it. Thank you, Melanie, for the back and forth we had. I've discovered, or Melanie discovered for me, that we have bits and pieces of land around Area D that can be used for parks that I didn't know about. So that was a real plus. And because I had that opportunity of working with Melanie, I don't have any changes I want to make to this. I want to propose, if I can do all the that's at once, I will.
Okay, so you're moving the four that's?
Yep.
Okay, Vivian's going to second it. I'll call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Yeah, I just want to thank you,
thank you.
Melanie. That was
Thank you
a
very
really
much.
good part. Lots
Yeah,
of-
excellent,
Lots of good
excellent.
communication back and forth.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you. You're most welcome. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Okay, number 6, director's report.
5.7.
Oh, 5.7. Excuse me. Now let me go back.
What's-
That's,
Looking at the select funds.
Yeah. 3.2.
Oh, and there's Suzanne.
3.2. You can't have any of mine.
Just a comment, and this partly comes from you, Director Mack, on the area B. So 2902 budget cost center. Beside the Lillooet and District Chamber of Commerce, it says membership. And we made a conscious decision to not purchase a membership. We were asked to purchase a membership, but we just made a contribution instead. And I just want to make that clear, and it should be reflected on this form. It was just a general purpose contribution to the good work that the Lillooet and District Chamber of Commerce was doing, but it was not specifically a membership. That was one. Okay,
Where is that?
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I can't find that either.
Okay, oh,
June EAD.
June 20. 20.
Oh, yeah, it says membership there of $2,000. June EAD.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you just want to get rid of that membership and call it just a donation?
yep.
You okay with that, Suzanne?
Yep, that's done.
Okay, the other one, under 2018 allocations committed towards the bottom of the page, November 80 towards the remembrance of past Seton Valley Volunteer Fire Department Fire Chief Frank Richings. So this has been on this page for the 4 years. My previous term, it was a commitment that Mickey, who since passed away himself, made to this group. And I know that there's transition with Shalath and the Seton Valley Volunteers and so on, but this commitment was around Fire Chief Frank Richings to this particular volunteer group, and they are still a society in their own right and doing some work related to fire. I know we're negotiating a longer term arrangement with Shalath that's in the works. So can I just ask that as soon as that long-term arrangement with Shalath is in place, that this money then get moved either through them or directly to the Seton Valley Volunteer Fire Department?
Suzanne, go ahead.
Yeah, so it would be better if we had a direct link to the fire chief, late fire chief Frank Richings. But if you just want the funds to go to the society, potentially that would be okay. I just have to review the resolution. I don't have the resolution on hand. But yeah, assuming the resolution works with that type of donation, then that would be fine. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Would you like me to word that resolution here now?
There is a previous resolution from 2018 that I just have to review. That's
Okay.
not, yeah.
Okay. Okay, that would be fantastic. Thank you. That's all I have.
Oh, then you're good with that?
Thank you.
So now do we have to? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say something because I'm not in the room, so Vivian can't throw anything at me. Quite frankly, I think your concerns there, Vivian, were between you and Suzanne. I'm not sure that should have been pulled out of consent. You know, if you want to change something, the way that something has been done with your select funds, then it can either be done with a phone call to Suzanne, or if you're going to change a resolution, then a director's report as a completely separate item to address that concern. But I think when those reports are in consent, it is just a report of what exists at this time, and I would have preferred that to have been passed and for this to have been dealt with separately. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Tony. So now, do we need to move in second on that?
No, I think we can just receive it.
Okay,
Okay.
motion
Thanks.
to receive that. Okay, move seconded. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. So that's good. Now we're on to directors' reports.
I'll have to declare a conflict of interest on agenda item 7.1.
7.1.
My daughter is an employee of the BRVCA and my wife is a director.
Okay, we haven't got quite there yet. So directors' reports.
There's nothing.
Okay, none. Okay, now we're on to there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Don't tell it, don't take all of the pie on the way out.
Okay, there's an idea.
Okay, so this request for funding, the Joy Lake Resident Association, the Joy Lake Aeration Project. I will move this on the Area A Director's behalf.
And I will second it.
Okay,
And I'll vote in favor.
very good. So I'll call a question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Now. There you go. Okay, 7.2, request for decision, Lillooet Airport Motocross Association seed funding. Vivian.
A motion for $2,500 to go to the Lillooet Airport Motocross Association. This is a new society in Area B from Electoral Area B Select Funds. Read the rest of it, Kristen, towards fuel costs for machine works and as leverage for other grant applications, including the Lillooet Community Fund. I'll move that.
Okay, and I'll second it. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. 7.3, now this,
What the heck?
yeah, what the heck? So anyways, request for funding, Permanent District Healthcare Foundation, 2022 Corporate Engagement Appeal. So, yeah, I don't,
Where does this come from?
well, it comes from the Pemberton District Healthcare Foundation. But
I
I
think
think,
it's an appropriate ask on this agenda.
yeah, and I think I need to go back to them and just say exactly that. I mean, when I saw this, I thought, geez, these guys are like, they've got a new group and they're very active, shall we say. But I think they yeah. Anyways,
Would you just like to receive the request? then?
yeah, I would just like to receive it and I will talk to the chair and the vice chair.
Okay, on that.
Okay. I'll second that, Sal?
Yeah.
Okay, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried, thank you.
Yeah, we also have a dynamite foundation for the Lillooet District Hospital.
Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I read through this and I didn't see anything from you, so I guess it got onto the agenda without it being referred to you. It would seem to me that it affects Area C and Pemberton. But in the larger context, I wonder if it's a matter for this board or whether it should go to the hospital board.
Yeah, I would say that's where it should end up exactly.
With Pevis.
No, it could go to the Cedar Sky. Yeah, hospital board through the board, right? But I'm gonna talk to these guys and ask them exactly what they want and what their, intentions are and what the end result is and all that sort of stuff. So,
And this seems is a sort of a general kind of a letter that has gone out because it talks about you and your company members. I think it's probably gone out to Fortis and
yeah, who knows?
and lots of other organizations. So yeah, there's something that doesn't quite fit.
No, exactly.
I'm not opposed to what they're trying to do, but they're going the wrong way about it.
Yeah, exactly. And what they're trying to do is they're just trying to raise funds to buy or put towards new equipment for the clinic. That's a wonderful thing.
Yep.
But it just doesn't come across right in here to me. When I read this, I thought, that just doesn't sound right. So anyways, I'll talk to them about that and get that sorted out.
But does this even need a resolution from us or from the board? It would seem to me that if you talk to them, they could simply then turn around and contact Jen and the hospital board.
Yeah, and explain themselves a little better than this.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 8, decision on late business. We don't have any. Late business. Apparently we don't have any of that. Director's notice of motion. None. Tony,
Chair, number 11, could I move adjournment?
very good. You've done a nice job. Craig, are you waving goodbye?
I'm racing out the door. No, Chair, I was wondering if the members of EAD would stay on the link for a few minutes to discuss the strategic planning session tomorrow.
Yes,
Yeah,
with pleasure.
Yep.
very good.
I get to eat Tony's
Okay,
lunch.
so this meeting is officially adjourned.
We moved the German.
We did.
Second.
Yeah. Moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried. I just wanted to make sure that somebody didn't want to stay.
So I'm going to.
Okay, so we're gonna.
Stay